Hello and welcome to the Sports Vlog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr or tweet the network at Greater STLSN. We're going to get to the Cardinals. We're going to get to this suit over the stadium. There's actually two filed. One by a SLU law professor and his students, and then one by the people that run the Edward Jones Dome. We'll get to a little weird news, a little hometown rundown. We'll do maybe a little bit of this week in sports, and then we'll end it with a potpourri. But we'll start it off with your Central Division winners, the St. Louis Blues. And the Blues have been playing well going down the stretch this season, and it looked like before that they maybe were struggling a little bit trying to find their way. But going down the stretch, definitely with the injuries to their top two scorers, Tarasenko and Steen, it seems like the Blues kind of found some lines to put together to end the stretch run on a high note and get these guys that they needed playing well, not one of the guys that they needed that are out, to get into the playoffs without having to play too much hockey and rest the injuries they have. Now, it started this week in Winnipeg, and the Blues kept the same lines going that they have been with the two guys out. Oshie with Schwartz and Stastny, Backus with Yaskin and Berglund, Laterra, Ratty, and Jokinen, Ott and Reeves. Now, the first period has seemed like many first periods for the Blues this season, and as I look at it now, I'm just starting to think it's a strategy to try to pace themselves for the way they play, which is high energy, high physicality, more towards the end of the game, the last 40 minutes, and kind of just staying on their heels for the first 20, playing just good enough defense, and going on little offensive spurts, but not trying to push it too hard. They did have a couple chances, but the Jets goalie, Pavlov, made a couple great saves in the first, and it left the first scoreless at 0-0. But the Winnipeg Jets did score in the second with 17:29 left, and they made it 1-0. And then it seemed like the Blues had tied it late in the second, but this is kind of when it seemed like the referees kind of took over. And if you were watching the game, or listening to the game to the announcers, it kind of seemed like they were even going after the referees as taking over the game and maybe going after some bad calls, as Paul Stastny seemed to tie the game on a great pass from Steve Ott, but yet he was waved off for a slashing penalty after the stick of a Winnipeg Jets defenseman was subsequently knocked out of his hand. Referees went to their review and looked at it, and a penalty was called, and it left the score at 1-0. Another questionable call that also later had that period, the Jets went on a power play on a questionable high stick by TJ Oshie, and it was called a double minor. So these are the kind of games where you have to play so good that the referees are going to keep it tight. And the Blues played as good as they could, but the offense didn't turn around, and the score ended 1-0. Now, Jake Allen played a very good game, having 30 saves, but I talked about something last podcast about maybe Ott and Reeves having to step up their scoring game, as they are better scorers than most people think. But actually, their physical game worked very well for the Blues in their last few games without the two guys to kind of start the turnovers and get the offensive process going. It's like last week in the Blackhawks game, I didn't get to it, but they had 50 hits in that game. And then against Winnipeg, they had 32, the Blues. So the physical emphasis that's put forth by the Blues I think is always going to work in a good offensive way. So me maybe going in my own mind thinking that we need more offense from them guys, maybe the other guys that will step up, like Schwartz did, like Yaskin has, like Berglund has, And these guys that are on the fourth line, the bigger guys, just kind of stay at it and wear the other team down to when it gets to the scoring situations for the better guys, Oshie and Backus and the rest of them, Stastny, that it's going to be odd man rushes because guys can't get back because they're worn out from the game. But another thing for the Blues that you like seeing is the blocked shots. They've been having a high number total of blocked shots when these guys are out, kind of knowing that all the scoring that they've had before with them two guys in, Tarasenko and Steen, that they need to play the defense to block the pucks, get on the forecheck, and stay in the offensive zones and work well with each other. They had 13 shots blocked in the Jets game. So it's a very well-played game by the Blues defense, and really the offense all the way around, but it leads to a 1-0 loss for the Blues. Now, they did play again in Chicago, and the Blues turned it around. And yes, they did win 2-1 at home against Chicago, and that's back-to-back 2-1 wins for the Blues. Allen was in goal, and another kind of slow first period for the Blues, but they go on the power play in the second, and one of them guys that's been stepping up that we were getting missing because he was on the same line with Berglund, and Berglund wasn't producing, was Dmitry Yaskin, who scored his power play goal, his 12th, to put the Blues up 1-0 in that game. Back his 32nd assist, Pietrangelo with his 39th. And then the Blues go up 2-0 as Paul Stastny scored his 16th. Schwartz and Shattenkirk assisting 35-36 respectively. Now the hits were high in this game also at 24. It doesn't sound like a lot compared to 50 last time they played the Blackhawks at the United Center, but it's still putting a physical emphasis, and you see how it worked for the Blues that they scored later in the game in the second period and third period, as maybe their guys are going on early and getting the job done in the first. I mean, the Blackhawks kept up the physical emphasis like the Blues did, also had 24 hits, but it was kind of fun to see how everybody was going at it in this game, that everybody wanted this game to prove the supremacy between this rivalry. And it's really not good for the Blackhawks now going down the stretch to play these two physical games against the Blues and come into losses. And then now you got to go into the playoffs thinking about that in your head. So it was nice to see the Blues come back to Scott Trade and play the same game that they played in the United Center. Allen was also in goal that game. So I think that was the fourth straight game for him that he was in goal, and he had 21 saves. And it kind of shows how they might be moving towards Jake Allen down towards the playoffs. And maybe it's because he's more rested than Elliott. And maybe that's why he's also playing better. You got to think of it that way, that even though the games were kind of close this year with the injuries to Elliott, that Jake not as playing as much as Elliott means he kind of has more in the take than Brian, who Brian hasn't had to play a full season of starting hockey. So he might be wearing down a little bit as we go to the end of the season. But 2 points there, and in that game, the Blues is where they clinched the Central Division with 107 points. Now, Saturday went into the game with the Wild, and with Anaheim at 107 points, the Blues were tied with them, Anaheim with the tiebreaker, for home ice all through the playoffs in the Western Conference. So this was actually going to be a big game for the Blues, just points-wise, to see if they could get that full stretch on, or full homes in the playoffs. And now this is also a game that was, you kind of see where Steen and Tarasenko were as they came back, and see if they were ready to go into the playoffs. And yes, they were. The lines with the scratches, Blues had a lot of scratches for this game, as Otts, Shattenkirk, Pietrangelo, Backus, and Oshie was out, so the lines ended up being Steenlo, Tarasenko, Schwartz, Stastny, Ratty, Yaskin, Jokinen, and Berglund, Port, Gotts, and Reason. The big guys got the start in the game, and it was nice to see that for the Blues, as they just went out early and said, "Oh, we're just gonna go at you hard early," where you got early. And it worked for the Blues, and they only got one shot off in the period, and it goes to the last games, and before that, the last 10 or 15 games where they're not putting offense as a top priority in the first period. They're more putting it on wearing their team out. But the Blues started it off in the second as that man again, Yaskin, scored his 13th with 6:33 left to put the Blues up 1-0. Berglund and Jokinen on the assist. Berglund's 15th, Jokinen's 6th on the season. The second goal was scored by Vladimir Tarasenko. And that's nice to see there. And Steen and Butler on the seat. That was Steen's 39th. Now the Wild do score in the second period late to make the score 2-1. And that was probably a save that Brian Elliott should have made as he was in goal. And it was a deep shot from around the blue line. And sometimes those hard shots with that little bit of screen can affect the goalie to where maybe he didn't see the shot all the way. But the Wild do make it 2-1 in the second. Now with 36 seconds left in the second, Laterra scores again for his, or Laterra scores for his 13th. Steen and Tarasenko with a assist gives Steen his 40th, Tarasenko his 36th assist. And now the Blues' fourth goal was actually scored on kind of a tricky play on a power play, as with 14:57 left in the third period, on a deflected shot off a defender's stick, Laterra actually scored his second goal unassisted for his 14th to put the Blues up 4-1. Now late in the game, this is where you kind of see that maybe these days off help Brian Elliott, as he had a 5-on-3 late in the third period where he faced a lot of shots and made spectacular saves, and he actually made a lot of good saves in the game, stopping a lot of good shots that were put on by the Wild. Now, the Wild did end up scoring late. I think it was 38 seconds left by Zach Parise. It put the game at 4-2, and there was a lot of shots in that power play, and it was actually on the 5-on-3 and 5-on-4. It was actually a 6-on-3 and a 6-on-4 as the Wild pulled their goalie late in the game. But the Blues do win it fair. Game ends 4-2. Elliott's 26th win on the year, his 23 saves on 25 attempts. Settlements the win for the Blues. That made the Blues 36-6-4 with scoring first, 51-24-7 on season, 109 points, and they won 5 of their last 6. It was the third 50-win regular season for the Blues, and it was nice to see the stars in the game in their first game back. 2 of them were Steen and Tarasenko. So you could tell by the way that Steen was passing and Tarasenko hit a really good shot on his goal that these guys are ready to go in it. And that's also good for them to get the time off the rest, as you don't know how all these guys are playing the way that Ken Hitchcock puts enforcement on them. Now another game where the Blues had a lot of hits, 24-12, and then a lot of block shots. They had 19 block shots. So I think starting the big boys proved that the Blues were going to go out here and play a physical game with all the scratches and the new guys back. And it probably wore the Wild out. So it was nice to see that for the Blues to end the season 109 points at first in the Central. Now home ice was on the line for the whole Western Conference as Anaheim played their game. They ended up winning 2-1 and supplemented the home ice in the playoffs. So the Blues, though, do end up playing the team that they beat in the Minnesota Wild. Playoffs will start 8:30 Central on Thursday, Scott Trade Center. Now, when I compared Elliott to another goalie last week, and that guy Ben Bishop, Elliott had 26 wins, but Ben Bishop ended up with 40. So, Elliott was injured. It kind of shows that we could have gave up on Ben Bishop, but 26 is still a lot of wins when your team had 51 wins on the year. So he had more than half the wins with the injury time. So I think that they do go with Elliott in the first couple games just to see where he's at. Maybe see that he's got his head together, that he And you can tell he was playing really well. I've seen most of the pucks very well, but, it did allow a cheap goal for the first goal. But I think if the Blues get down quick or he has one bad game, I think it's Jake Allen, and I think they ride him. Just the way he's been playing, I think he's the guy you got to ride if Elliott struggles, and you can't go back to Elliott. It's going to affect him in some way where you can't go back to him. Maybe you do the two goalie system and just switch it up with Jake Allen getting a little more, but that's the way you to do it, I would think. Now, Tarasenko ends the season with 73 points. That's the most for a Blues since 02-03. And the Blues did have a lot of points for some of their top guys. 73 for Tarasenko, as I said. Steen had 64. Schwartz ends with 63. Bakish ends with 58. Oshie ends with 55. Stastny with 46. Pietrangelo with 46. Laterra with 44. Shaddy with 44. And then it kind of drops down a little bit to Berglund, number 10, with 27. So there's even a lot of defensemen in there, which shows that your defense can also help you offensively. And I think you kind of do what you kind of played into this game against the Wild again, since it kind of worked after you struggled with them early in the season, that the physical thing started off by the Blues. Probably did wear them down to where the Blues got them good goals chance or good scoring chances. But I said the Blues will play the Wild on Thursday at the Scott Trade. So it'll be nice to see the Blues in the playoffs, and maybe we can start a good playoff run down the stretch. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to get back to it with the Cardinals right here on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Shining bright, no one ever made me feel this way. No, we took a chance when we danced, and building with these words I say. Suddenly you came along, like the words without a song, waiting for us to sing. Show me the love that you give when I'm lying next to you. I can tell by the beat of your heart that it's true. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. I'm Robert Bowlesby. You could tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You could tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. And we're going to get to the week that was for the St. Louis Cardinals. And after a win on Sunday and opening night for Major League Baseball, the week starting off was kind of blah for the Cardinals as they had a day off on Monday. And then kind of a question rained down on Tuesday, as some say was maybe for the Cubs to bring in the porta potties and stuff, as they had trouble on opening night with people going to the bathroom and going places they weren't supposed to be going, or that it was for a rivalry game later in the season after the bleachers had done for the Cubs to make more money. So that game was rained out, but the Cardinals kept their staff the same, as Lynn was supposed to go on Tuesday. Instead, he went on Wednesday and he faced Missouri native Jake Arrieta. And this was a pitcher's duel for both teams, as Lynn looked very good, but Arrieta, who pitched well last year in his breakout season, even though he's been in the major leagues for a while, but his breakout season was last year versus the Cubs, he also pitched very well for his first start of the season against the Cardinals. The score was 0-0 until the 7th, when the inning started off with Lance Lynn hitting Anthony Rizzo. He then advanced to second on an error pickoff by Lance Lynn. Sterling Castro then comes up and gets a single RBI to make it 1-0. The Cubs do score a later one on a Miguel Montero sacrifice fly to make it 2-0. And that's how the game ends for the Cubs. Or for the Cardinals and Cubs. 2-0 Cubs win. And was kind of where I was going back to, is the offense is going to have to get jump-started, or this team is going to have to pitch this so exceptionally well that you're going to have like the 1960 stats, or before that, Bob Gibson stats, to win this division. And the Cardinals only in that game only had 3 runners in scoring position. They went 0 for 3. So it's not nice seeing that you're not even getting the players in the scoring position to help you other guys get on base. Like 2 guys that you needed to get going, Peralta and Adams, they were 0 for 7 in the series against the Cubs in the 2 games, leaving 13 on base. So if it's early in the season, you're going to struggle pitching-wise or offensive-wise. But it was nice seeing Lynn pitch well going in there and not having like the full spring training that all the other pitchers had. He went 6 innings, 2 hits, the 1 earned run. Both runs ended up being allowed by him, as it was his error that led to the other run. He had 1 walk and 9 Ks. But outdueling him was Arrieta. He went 7 innings, 3 hits, 0 run, 3 walks, and 7 Ks. And Arrieta, who's from Farmington, in his 6 starts against the Cardinals, 36 in the 3rd innings, 3-0 with a 0.74 ERA. So he ratchets it up when he plays his hometown team. And it's probably just something different to him. I'm going against the Cardinals and the Cubs in the rivalry. So he probably ratchets it up because of that too. And, it's early in the season. They'll figure it. Cardinals offense will figure it out in a way. So we'll just kind of progress this as the season goes along and see where they're at. And hopefully they stepped up. Now the Cardinals faced an old friend on Friday night as they went to Cincinnati, as they had a day off Thursday. And that was Jason Marquis. Now Jason Marquis didn't pitch last year, so he was out with an injury. But he made the Reds roster this year. And this guy is just one of them guys that just stayed in the league, that got the secret ball going and kind of just keeps proving himself every time that someone thinks he's down. He's somehow back in the league. Now this game started off the series is not very good for the Cardinals, as Joey Votto torched John Lackey for 2 2-run home runs in his first 2 at-bats in the game. The Cardinals actually took a 1-0 lead, though, as Johnny Peralta doubled in Matty Carp to make it 1-0 in the first. Votto hit his first of 2 home runs to make it 2-0 Reds. The Cardinals came back, though, as that man Randall Grichuk, your power guy from the spring, and almost played him out of way to spot, was starting in center field for John Jay, and he hit his first home run in his first at bat of the season, and they gave the Cardinals a 3-2 lead. And it's nice to see him being productive. And the problem is it's going to start a lot of things to where people are going to go at John Jay. Number one, because he's not the power hitter that Grichuk is, but another reason is because you already got a heavy left-handed lineup and maybe another right-handed power guy instead of another left-handed get-on-base guy is better offensively for this team. So it's probably not coming just yet, but if Grichuk keeps playing the way he's been playing since the start of spring training, it's going to come. But the Reds took the lead back in the 3rd inning as Votto hit his second of his 2-run home runs. He made it 4-3 Reds. Well, after that 3rd inning, both pitchers settled down in the game. Marquis ends the game going 6 innings, 5 hits, 3 home runs, 2 walks, and 7 Ks. John Lackey goes 6 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks. He only had 1 strikeout. So another quality start for your pitching. I think it was 4 earned runs. But I mean, not a quality start, but another start to where you're not allowing a bunch of runs. You're keeping your team close, but you would have liked to see Lackey pitch better. But this is probably another thing of him not getting all the innings and him trying to find his groove. And a lot of these pitchers early in the season are going to struggle, but you would like to see them pitch a little better. But that is a home run ballpark. And then both of the home runs were actually opposite field, so Votto actually hit pretty good pitches. But the Cardinals do come back to tie the game in the 7th, though, and off of Manny Parra, replacing Marquis, Jason Hayward singled in John Jay to make it 4-4. But the Cardinals could have had a bigger threat going, as in that inning, Matt Carpenter was thrown out to 3rd for the 2nd out, and the game ended up being tied after that inning. But the Reds come up in the 8th, and after a walk to Billy Hamilton, he then advanced on a wild pitch by Jordan Walden, and then got the third. The Reds took advantage and took the lead 5-4 on the sacrifice fly by Todd Frazier, Hamilton scoring. And Chapman comes in to close it out for the Reds. They win at 5-4. Now, you did have a better game for some of the people that ain't been producing. To start off, only in the first 2 games of the season, Peralta and Wong all had 2 hits. Cardinals had 10 hits in the game, but only 2 for 9 in runners in scoring position. So you had the 10 hits. You had the better hits, but you got to capitalize on the runners in scoring position to win a game. I mean, you scored the 4 runs. You're starting to build your offense. So it is looking a little better. But the Cardinals do end up starting the series down 1-0 in the series. Now, Walker and Cueto went on Saturday. And this time the Reds scored first as Todd Frazier hits his 3rd of the year. And they made it 1-0 Reds. The Cardinals came back in the 2nd after Todd Frazier made an error. They ended up scoring on a sacrifice fly by Colton Wong. Peralta scored to make this 1-1. The game tied 1-1. Well, the Cardinals led off the 4th with the first home run of the season from Matt Adams. So it's nice to see the power stroke from him to give the Cardinals a 2-1 lead. And the Cardinals ended up keeping the lead to where it was until they got to the 9th. And with 1 out, Matt Adams again singled to right. Borges comes in and runs. Borges steals second base, his 2nd of the season. And on a Peralta hit, he scores to make it 3-1. Then after a John Jay hit to put the runners at 1st and 2nd, Yadier Molina scored. To center, Peralta scores on a throw by Hamilton that was up the line that could have got him out and made the score 4-1. And Rosie came in to close the door. It was a little bit of struggling as the lefties couldn't get the left-handers out. Rosenthal had to come in to get a 5-out save for his 2nd save of the season. Yachty and Adams again had stepped up again. Another player's going to step up. They had 2 hits. Michael Walker went 6 in the 3rd, had 5 hits, only allowed 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. So a nice start from him. And maybe hoping that injury didn't affect him as it did at the end of last year. Cueto also pitched a very good game. He went 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, and 1 walk, and 4 Ks. But the Cardinals even up the series, and it's nice to see that the pitching shut down enough and the offense scored enough. So it was nice to see the power from Matt Adams. Borges comes in, does his job, as I said he was going to do. Come in, steal the bases, score the runs, play defense, as he was replaced Holiday later in that game, win the center. And just be that guy you need to maybe spark some situation like what happened in the 9th inning. Well, the rubber match came to Sunday as Carlos Martinez faced Raciel Iglesias in his Major League debut. Mark Reynolds actually got to start in first in this one. And the Reds again started off getting the lead in the 2nd as Jay Bruce hit his 2nd home run of the year to make it 1-0 Reds. In the 5th inning, though, the Cardinals come back, and after a leadoff double by Peralta, a walk by Wong, and then a sacrifice to Martinez, Matt Carpenter hit a 2-out single for 2 RBIs to give the Cardinals a 2-1 lead. Next batter, Jason Hayward doubled off the wall. Carpenter scored. Hayward is thrown out at 3rd, trying to stretch his double into a triple, but gets the double in the RBI to put the Cardinals lead at 3-1. Billy Hamilton surprises everybody and hits a home run in the 5th to make it 3-2 Reds. Now in the 7th, Molina walked, went to 2nd on a pass ball. Wong then struck out. Gritchett then struck out. And then Carpenter walked. Another wild pitch happened and put runners on second and third, but with 2 outs, Hayward ended up popping out to stop another threat. It stays the same, 3-2 Cardinals. But then in the bottom of the 7th, the Reds get their 2 runners on base, starting with a bunt and a single off a drawn-in infield off the single, went off just over the glove of Carpenter. And then the Cardinals get it out on a kind of a bad bunting by a pitcher as he strikes out on a bunting foul with 2 strikes. Billy Hamilton gets thrown out for 2 outs. And that ends the inning right there. Or excuse me, Molina throws out Hamilton on a little tapper in front of the plate. This was all against Seth Maness. He is then replaced by Randy Cho to face Joey Votto with 2 outs. Votto then walks the loaded bases, and Matt Belisle comes in, and he allows a hit to Todd Frazier. He gets a 2 RBI single, runs charge of Seth Lyons, and it puts the Reds up 4-3. Brandon Phillips then comes up, singles Joey Votto home, made it 5-3 Reds. Belisle is then replaced by Seagrass, who gets Bruce, and it leaves the game at 5-3 Cincinnati. Holiday then leads off the 8th with a single. Cardinals' next batter, Johnny Peralta, he then hits his first home run of the season and ties the game at 5-5. And this has just been a fun game so far for the Cardinals. After that, a walk to Reynolds. John Jay is then hit to put runners at first and second. Not without a little argument from the manager of Cincinnati, as he maybe thought that John Jay either swung at it or didn't hit him. He was then thrown out from the game. John Jay came up to bat after this as Borges came out to pinch run for Reynolds. Or after the John Jay at bat, after he's hit. Borges comes in to pitch run for Reynolds, and Molina comes up and bunts into a double play. Mike Matheny then comes out to argue. Cooler heads prevail. And then Mike Matheny comes out again and has the bunt reviewed. Well, somehow the review caused the play to be reversed, saying Molina was tagged out at the plate on the butt, and Borges was called safe at third on a 9-4 stop play, and Jay at second. Now, Wong came up and pops out on the infield, leaving runners on second and third, 2 out for pitch hitter Matt Adams, who pops out also, leaves the game at the bottom of the 8th, 5-5. And Jordan Walden came out to shut the Reds down in the 8th, as Chapman did to the Cardinals and Rosie did in the 9th. And it was scoreless there until the 11th, when Matty Carpenter came up and hit his first home run of the season. In the 11th inning, put the Cardinals up 7-5. Cardinals win. Charlie Villanueva gets his first win. The Cardinals goes 2 innings without allowing any runs. So Cardinals win the series against the Reds 2-1. And it's nice to see that the Cardinals offense stepped up in a game where your bullpen wasn't all the way there. And it started off really bad with the 7th inning, but it did progress better as the teams did have a lot of walks and a lot of hits in the bullpen, but they only allowed and ended up the 3 runs that cost the Cardinals the game. Or they cost the Cardinals the lead in the 7th inning. But it's nice to see the Cardinals come back in a game where it looks like they were down in the dumps, and then they come back and tie the game and then win in the 11th. So hopefully you see more of this good pitching in this game, because Martinez did pitch very well in the game, went 6 innings, 4 hits, and 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. So your first 5 starters all pitched very well. And if you get this progressing in the end of the season, and this offense can maybe do what they did in this 7-5 win, getting power from everybody, it'd be nice to see that. All right, we're going to go next to these suits by the Rams after we take a break. This is the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. And welcome back to the sports blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You could tweet me at RBowlesbyJR. You could tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. I kind of wanted to get to this stadium situation as two suits were filed in St. Louis this week. Kind of the stadium funding and the voting process going forward on the stadium. It started on April 8th. And this is from the Post-Dispatch from writer David Hunn. A SLU law professor and three of his students had demanded the city of St. Louis reveal plans to use public money to pay for a new downtown football stadium and schedule a public vote or expect a lawsuit. The letter threatens to further cloud the financing of Governor Jay Nixon's $985 million riverfront arena proposed and hopes of keeping the NFL in St. Louis. The students, along with SLU law professor and legal clinic supervisor John Ammon, sent a letter to Counselor Winston Calvert on behalf of their client, William White. Ammon said he believes any city assistance, even vacating the streets, would trigger a city law requiring a public vote. If one person at City Hall is working on this, well, then that's financial assistance. The law is pretty broad. It says direct or indirect, Ammon said. Ammon also said that White, who used to be homeless, is a client at the clinic and expressed his frustration that the city might spend millions of dollars on a new stadium without setting aside any extra for social services. White, according to the letter, wants the city to consider putting 2% of the stadium funding towards homeless services. Peacock and Blitz, Nixon's stadium guys, did not reply for comment, but former Francis Slade chief of staff and Slade's consultant on keeping the Rams in St. Louis, Jeff Rainford, did. He said, as far as a vote goes, it remains to be seen. We don't have the financial plan, so we really don't know whether or not the vote will be required. Rainford also reiterated that for the past 3 years, Mayor Slade has said that if there's a tax-free fee or tax or fee increase that becomes part of the financing plan, there would be a public vote. Wafer said it would likely become before the October meeting by the NFL owners, where St. Louis plans to reveal their stadium plans. He also responded on the letter's attack on the city homeless services. The threat of a lawsuit is silly, but the homeless part is not. It is misinformed. The mayor and the city have done more than any in this region to address homelessness, and yet we keep getting this nonsense. So that was that for this article. And I'm going to read the other article, then I'll kind of give my opinion on it. Now, this was also by David Hunn. This was on November 11th. The public body that owns and operates the Edward Jones Dome filed a suit against the city of St. Louis to try to avoid a civil vote on the use of taxpayers' money for the new downtown football stadium. The suit says a 2002 city ordinance required a public vote is overly broad, vague, and ambiguous, and asked the judge to rule that it either doesn't apply in this case, conflicts with the state statute, or is unconstitutional. Dave Peacock responded to this article saying our issue is not time. Our issue is time, not a public vote. They sped up the timeline, and we need clarity. Now, John Ammon responded to this article saying our concern is that one guy is suing another, but both have been working together to build a new stadium. The city councilor has a responsibility to vigorously defend all the laws of our city. Our role will be to monitor to make sure that city council represents citizens, not the interests of the NFL. Forget the legalities of it. Instead, do you want to go behind the city's backs who believe they have the right to vote on this? Now, the lawsuit said on Friday did clear up some questions on some of the financing. And also about the people that are kind of worried about the county not kicking in the $6 million on the bonds that they had for the Edward Jones Dome. The suit says the city will issue new bonds which will pay off the city's bet on the Edward Jones Dome, as well as provide capital for the new construction. Debt services will not need to exceed the $6 million a year in current payments. The city will also donate land to the project and provide some sort of tax-based incentive, such as a tax increment, financing, or creation of a transportation development district or community improvement district. Now, Nixon and Jim Shrewsbury, who's Nixon appointed Dome Authority chairman, both have said no public vote is needed. Shrewsbury also said that 10 of the 11 authority board members, 3 from the Mayor Slade camp, passed the resolution and allowed him to hire contractors and file suit on behalf of the board. Now, Slade and president of the board of Alderman Lewis Reed also want the Rams to say, but they also want to follow the law. Slade's promised to vigorously defend the validity of the ordinance, but also said that the city will continue to pay the $6 million of annual payments, and it will be beyond the expiration date of 2021. Reed said he wanted to keep the Rams in St. Louis, but we have to follow the law and do not want to lose public confidence by going around them. Now, the suit was filed by Robert Blitz's law firm. Now, my comments on this is that you see a guy who says he's filing something on a homeless guy's behalf, but yet, because it's not going to benefit him any, he wants a vote on this to affect because he thinks that people need money. He thinks that homeless people need money. Don't the city people already pay taxes to help with the shelters, help with the soup kitchens for the homeless people? And now I heard that they're going to transfer people from Larry Rice's facility to another facility at 6:30 at night and then bus them to where they need to go at 6:30 in the morning and then bus them back at night. So another taxpayer problem. But we don't have public votes on that. We have public votes on trying to better St. Louis. So the reason I think that the Edward Jones Dome people filed the suit was because they know if this went to a vote, the citizens wouldn't want to add a new tax that they don't know that will help affect the city. The city needs to be rebuilt, and wouldn't it look nice with that stadium down there on the riverfront with the arch and all that? The other thing that people are understanding, these bonds are going to help pay off the Edward Jones Dome, but probably also help build up the Edward Jones Dome to where it's a top facility for attractions to come here. Now, wouldn't you not like that they have that across the street from a $1 billion football stadium that brings attraction to your town, brings other attractions to your town with the money going to the Edward Jones Dome? Now, I do think it's kind of funny that the Edward Jones people are kind of suing the city of St. Louis, who have all said, both parties, that they are trying to keep the Rams here, but I think they're doing it to stop a public vote from happening because they probably know that the people in St. Louis won't vote for it. Because you got people like John Ammon who think that these should go to other people that, and I'm not saying that the homeless don't try to help themselves, but they're homeless for a reason. And the taxes are already given to them to help for jobs and food and all that. So I don't think how this issue of paying this little bit of money to help build a city up that needs to be built up is a bad thing. So I think the first suit is kind of ridiculous to say, oh, we should do this for other people, because it didn't. Those lawsuit came because it doesn't benefit Jeff Ammon, who in SLU built up their campus for city money, didn't have to have a vote for what they said they're a nonprofit, but yet they get money from students and backers and I forgot exactly what they're called, boosters, to help pay for their school. Yeah, we don't have to vote on that, but yet we have to pay for it. So why would we have to vote on something that would better St. Louis and bring attractions to St. Louis when in both instances they would make St. Louis better? Well, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're probably going to finish the show off in the next segment. We'll see. We'll be right back on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. And welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. We're going to start off this segment with a little hometown rundown. We'll start it off with the soccer team, St. Louis FC, as they played their home opener at Soccer Park in Fenton to a sold-out crowd of 5,280. And they played the Pittsburgh River Rounds to a 1-1 tie. The St. Louis U graduate, Brendan Barklage, scored the first goal of the game for the St. Louis FC in the 43rd minute on a redirected kick. But in the 73rd minute, the River Hounds ended up tying the game. Even though St. Louis FC obviously had the better offense, they led in shots 15-7. So they'll play next time out there at Worldwide Technology Soccer Park, April 18th, and against the Rochester Rhinos. The St. Louis FC club plays in the United Soccer League. And now the St. Louis Attack played also on Saturday at the Family Arena. And on a last-second field goal, the Attack edged the Bloomington Edge 47-45 in a thriller at home. Now the Edge scored with 10 seconds left to take the lead to 45-44. With 1 second left in the game, linebacker Jason Knoll kicked a 41-yarder to give his team the win. 4 guys scored in the game for the Attack, with DeAndre Jackson scoring twice. It brings the Attack's record to 2-1, and they play again on the road April 18th, next Saturday, in Ohio against the Blue Racers. They come back to the Family Arena in St. Charles on April 24th, and again they play the same Marion Blue Racers. Now we're going to get to a little kind of weird news. As on April 9th, a federal judge was asked to grant an emergency restraining order barring Kim Kardashian and Kanye West from ever entering Florida, appearing on Florida TV. Oddly, the petitioner was an inmate of the Philadelphia prison, Rain Richard Albright, who's 44. He said, "I think it's safe to say as a country, we are sick and tired of the Kardashians, and most of all, Kimberly and her self-proclaimed best rapper rock star on the planet, Kanye West." Albright's in prison for not registering as a sex offender, and this is not his first time going after a celebrity. He has a Boston judge to ban on-air dancing from the Weather Channel's Jim Cantor, and sought to have a Philly judge remove the TV show The Bachelor from the air because it did not install good values in children. In the Kardashian-West pension, Albright told the courts that the task America has placed on your shoulders, and it won't be an easy one, but we have faith in your ability to get the job done. So what do you say? Make us proud. It was denied by a district court judge. Now, another story that came out was that St. Louis rapper Nelly is facing felony drug charges after being arrested in Tennessee. Nelly's tour bus was stopped around 9:20 on Saturday morning for failure to display a U.S. Department of Transportation and International File Tax Assistance sticker. After a general inspection, an officer smelled a strong hint of marijuana and did a probable cause search of the tour bus. In the sleeper area, the troopers found a plastic bag of 5 crystal-type rocks that tested positive for methamphetamine. They also found marijuana and drug paraphernalia, and they also found numerous plastic bags commonly used for narcotic sales and they also found multiple handcuffs. Nelly was charged with felony possession of drugs, simple possession of marijuana, and possession of drug paraphernalia. So it was something different in the news this week, as we actually got one from St. Louis. Now on this day in sports, this week in sports, on April 6, 1973, was named Roberto Clemente Day. The Pirates also retired his number on this day. And the first modern-day Olympics happening in 1896. Also on that day, April Hershiser in 1989 allowed his first run in a MLB record 59 innings. On the 7th, at 23 in 1963, Jack Nicklaus became the youngest golfer to win the Masters. And in 1984, Dwight Gooden debuts, and in 1977, Reggie Jackson got his first start. On the 8th, in 1975, Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record of 714 to become the all-time leader at 715. In 1963, on the 8th, Pete Rose made his Major League debut. On the 9th, the first game was played indoors in baseball in the Astrodome as Mickey Mantle hit the first home run indoors in an exhibition game between the Yankees and the Astros. In 1987, Wayne Gretzky scored 7 points on the 9th in a Stanley Cup game to become the all-time scoring leader in the NHL. And then on the 10th, he scored his 63rd playoff goal for a record with the LA Kings. In 2000, Ken Griffey on the 10th became the youngest to hit 400 home runs. In 1947, on April 11th, Jackie Robinson became the first black player in the exhibition game for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then in 1965 and 1966, on this date, on April 11th, Jack Nicholson won the Masters. And now the one that we're going to end it with for St. Louis is on the 12th. In 1995, NFL owners voted to give the LA Rams permission to move to St. Louis. So it's just kind of funny when I looked it up. I never planned on seeing this, but it's just kind of funny on the last day. This is what I seen. The NFL voted to give the LA Rams permission to move to St. Louis. And now 20 years later, they're trying to go back. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to it with a little bit of potpourri of sports. We'll be right back on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You can also tweet the network at Greater STLSN. Now some UFC news this week. This is from BlogApr.com, part of SB Nation. Bellator was granted a injunction against fighter Quentin Rampage Jackson, forcing him out of UFC 186. After original postponement of New Jersey Supreme Court, Jackson's future does not involve his April 25th showdown at UFC 186. Judge Karen Suter granted Bellator the injunction to block Rampage from fighting for the UFC. The lawsuit filed in March, citing a failure of Rampage to fulfill his contractual obligations. Rampage had 3 fights left on his exclusive Bellator contract, but he claims he left Bellator because they didn't renegotiate his deal within the 45-day window they had. The injunction only keeps him off this card, but it does not close this case. The real battle will be Bellator trying to get Jackson to fight in their promotion. The UFC responded by they have been advised of the New Jersey State Court's ruling in the matter between Quentin Rampage Jackson and Bellator MMA. The UFC organization was surprised about the ruling because Mr. Jackson represented himself to the UFC on multiple occasions that he was free to negotiate and contract with the UFC. The UFC organization is also surprised that Bellator sat on its alleged rights for months before taking action. The UFC understands that Mr. Jackson is considering an emergency appeal and that the UFC is also considering action to protect its rights and minimizing damages regarding this latter. UFC 186 will be continuing its plan, and the UFC is evaluating its fight card options. Now, this is kind of funny that on the night that they announced the signing, in December, Bellator's president Scott Coker, who went to Twitter to state that the promotion was planning to protect its contractual right. Coker tweeted, "Let us be clear, Quentin Rampage Jackson is under exclusive contract with hashtag Bellator MMA. We will protect our contractual rights, and we will protect our contractual rights." Now, Coker, if you want a little background on him, founded Strikeforce back in 1987. It started off as a kickboxing promotion, and its first MMA event was not held until March of 2006. He was then bought out by the UFC and worked for the company that puts on the UFC promotion, Zuffa, for 3 years before on June 18th of 2014 being named the president of Bellator. So he finally got his chance to go with the big guys. I bet you he's happy about that by a company that he's probably making good money at in the UFC to probably just kind of laid him off without even saying we had negotiating or anything. And now he gets to go back at him to build this Bellator promotion to be as good as Strikeforce. And you got to have big names to do it. Quentin Rampage Jackson is still kind of a big name. So why not go and try to get him to fight your promotion 3 more times before you have to let him go? So it's kind of a good move on his part, but I think it's kind of a messed up move that you're not just going to let a guy go. Just let him go. Let him do what he wants. He didn't want to fight in promotion. Didn't work out. Let him go. Rampage is kind of out of his prime. I don't think he's going to be this big main fighter, this big money drawer still. But maybe he can be just because of his name and his fighting style. We'll update you on the NFL playoffs before we go. And in the East, it's going to be the Canadiens of Montreal versus the Ottawa Senators. Ben Bishop and his 40 wins in this Tampa Bay Lightning team will take on the Red Wings. New York versus Pittsburgh as they made it in on the last day. And last year's Cup winner, Boston, was eliminated. Then the Washington Capitals will also play the New York Islanders. Now in the West, the Wild versus the Blues, as you know. It's going to be the Predators versus the Hawks, the Ducks versus Winnipeg, and Vancouver versus Calgary. It's kind of cool to see that the Canada teams are going each other in the first round. That's going to make for good Canada TV. Good ratings for the NHL. Also on a Blues perspective, if you want to look at it, 2 good, scrappy teams in Chicago and Nashville got to play each other in the first round. So hopefully you just hope them teams just go at it and you get your job done and you don't have to worry about, being ready to fight Chicago. Maybe they're already beat down, or playing Nashville, maybe they're already beat down, and you get your job done getting, quick win against the Wild, and you don't have to get this team these teams when they're on their stretch running. They do get a little break before this first round. It was also news this week as Al McInnes' son, Ryan McInnes, former Blues great Al McInnes, Hall of Famer, signed his first contract with the Arizona Coyotes. So congrats to him on that. Now with 3 games left for most teams, as we're going to move on to the NBA, the NBA playoffs are about set. As Boston is going to play the number 2 team Cavs and clinch. I think they won today, and I think Indiana has to lose. Brooklyn will remain in the 8th spot, and they'll play the number 1 team Atlanta. Toronto versus Milwaukee, and Chicago versus Washington. That's the East. In the West, the Pelicans of New Orleans are going to play. They own a tiebreaker as they're tied with OKC. Memphis versus Dallas. Los Angeles versus Houston. And Portland versus San Antonio in the NBA. So that's how we're going to end it today. We'll see you next week. And this is the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. I'm Robert Bowlesby. See you next week.